widest of any of the industrialized nations. We don't even win, place, or show in any of the places where we used to rank number one. The whole system is declining. This is not nationalism, what they're doing with the merger of state and corporate powers, and it's not socialism. As defined by Mussolini, it's fascism. And fascism has come to America.
You know, Gerald, I think your point is well made, that this is a systemic crisis of a whole new magnitude. But what would you tell the listener who said, you guys have been saying this for some time, the stock market in the meantime has rallied sharply, and there's seems to be some signs of green shoots is what we're hearing. What do you tell someone who's watching their portfolio and 401ks recover here from the lows?
Well, what you do is you have to look at why there is this so-called recovery. Again, just follow the facts. And some of the facts are that the stocks are recovering because of there's huge cost-cutting going on, very aggressive. So the firms aren't growing. They're just cutting back and cutting their losses. Secondly, the markets are obviously being manipulated, as we see again with this high-frequency trading and these flash trades that are going on. And thirdly, let's look at the banking stocks. Have people forgotten the new mark-to-market rules that allow these equity firms to put any kind of value on their toxic assets that they please and call it profit? So that's all it is. And then you have to really look at the fundamentals that are going on here. And the fact is that America's incomes are heading down. The wages and salaries, which, as you know, drive recoveries in spending, fell 4.7% in the 12 months through June. I mean, what more evidence do you need to see that this is a false flag bear market recovery?
And, you know, I think your point is very salient when you said earlier, you know, the gap between the haves and the have-nots that is becoming so significant, the largest gap in the industrialized world. For instance, you know, I talked to my dentist the other day. His business is booming. And he says, you know, Chris, I can't understand this doom and gloom that you're purveying. You know, maybe that's because you have sort of an inelastic supply of customers, you know, but the retail sector, the manufacturing sector, you know, auto sales, housing, that made up 50, 60, 70% of the economy.
Yes, these are only temporary upticks, and we just don't see it going on for much longer. It cannot happen, not with, as I said, not with the gap between the rich and the poor being at the highest level of any of the industrialized nations and showing the unemployment data. What are we talking about? Effective unemployment rate is about 18.7%. The discouraged workers, people looking for jobs that can't find them, and those already off the rolls. And this is just beginning. So where's the recovery going to happen? Where are the jobs being created? Well, we know where the stimulus money is going. The stimulus money is going to state, local governments. And they're creating jobs. Whoopee-doo, non-productive jobs that cost the taxpayers. Where else are the jobs being created? Oh, in that high-paying healthcare sector, even the hospitality sector is dying. So no, we don't see recovery. Again, when you look at medical, any kind of disposable income they have, they're going to put into their health first. So the dentists, doctors, those aren't good indices. The retail sector is, and the retail sector from luxury goods all the way down is declining, except, of course, for the Walmarts. Now, and that brings up another point, because people then ask us, how can we get out of this? And the answer, as we see it, is very simple. We don't need Wall Street. We need Main Street. We don't need Walmarts. We need mom and pops. We don't need factory farms. We need family farms. We don't need genetically modified foods. We need organic foods. And I don't say this as hyperbole or rhetoric. I say it as fact. Because when that was the America that those of us are old enough to remember that we grew up in, that's when America was the most egalitarian nation on earth. Till that model returns, and if we keep going in the other way with the too big to fails, then our quality of life goes down. People have bought into this whole notion of everyday low prices and that cheap is good. Cheap stinks. Chief stinks, and inequality is low, pays low-paying jobs. We need quality has to come back to America. That's the renaissance that we see that has to happen for this country to retain its greatness.
You're right on track there. I mean, it's not hubris at all to think that we can return. However, I think you'd probably agree to build the structure that would lead to more mom-and-pop banks, as we used to see on Main Street, as well as mom-and-pop manufacturing and retail outlets and supermarkets and things of that nature. That's going to take time, isn't it, Gerald?
It is. And the people have to become activated, because what we're watching what's going on here is how could the people be so brain dead to stand back and let this happen to them? Where's their dignity gone? As I mentioned to you, this is what we're seeing now, the greatest crime wave ever to hit America. It's the great bank robbery. It's the banks that are doing the robbing. And the people have become indentured servants and slaves. Who's going to pay off that $13 trillion that you were talking about earlier? It's on our backs to pay off these people that take our money, and as soon as they get our money, as they did with the TARP bailout money, they skim it off the top, and they call it bonuses and executive compensation. So we can go back to that kind of a nation when the people themselves return to that kind of quality of life.
You know, you paint a frightening picture, but I think it's very accurate. Look at the everyday middle-class American family, simply gutted. Sure, the elite are doing well, smart enough to buy into gold and assets to protect themselves during the inflation. But the typical American, up to their eyeballs in debt, they're not home owners, they're home debtors. What I think the answer to your question is, how did we get here? Why are people becoming serfs and slaves to the system? If you don't feel like you're economically empowered and you're just struggling day by day just to keep the creditors at bay, you know, how are you going to make any change?
Well, that's part of it, but also they're starved intellectually and they're starved nutritionally. We're a junk food nation. I'm Italian. I don't eat corporate. I know what good food tastes like. And I don't need some white jacket the agri-industry rolls out to tell me that genetically modified foods are as good as organic and have the same nutritional value. I raised for many years my own chickens. I had my own farm. I know the difference in the flavor, the taste, and the quality. And what goes in goes out. And when you look at what America has become, the most obese nation in the world, the most sedentary nation in the world, and now, as we just saw, the most antidepressant drug-induced nation in the world, as the data shows. We're starving in many different ways. I mean, look what just happened. The little media coverage that was going on to the great bank robbery of the United States was usurped by the death of Michael Jackson. Day after day, night after night, week after week, the biggest mouths in broadcasting, babbling on about every little innuendo of Michael Jackson's tormented life. This is America. While Rome is burning, the media is fiddling.
Exactly. Nero fiddled as Rome burned. And it's really just a red herring, isn't it? I mean, it's a ruse to distract the hoi polloi from what's really up. To address your nutrition statement, you're preaching to the choir here. We've got to get back to whole foods, because it is in that unprocessed food that we truly nourish the body.
I have a photo of my parents' wedding. May they souls rest in peace, 1934, Italian immigrants. Oh, the class, the dignity, the style. And you look at the people now, what they look like. You know, what happened to this country? Exactly.
We're not hurting for calories. We're just hurting for nutrition. Very good. Well, as we wrap up here, what are your latest market projections?
Well, of course, you know, we're not financial investment advisors. We don't do that. We're trend forecasters. I can tell you what I do. I'm 80% invested in gold. And very simple strategy. My cash is divided between dollars and euros. When the dollar goes up, the euro goes down. When the euro goes up, the dollar goes down. All I want in that aspect is parity. My gold is the wild card. And, of course, it's not so wild now as it's moving past approaching the 970 mark. So it looks very good. It was a good breakout over the 950 to 900 range, and we're still looking at gold 2000.
I agree with you. I mean, we may have to take it one step at a time, maybe 1250 first. Could you tell folks how they could find out more about your work as we wrap up here?
Yes, to find out more about us, our website is trendsresearch.com. That's plural, trendsresearch.com. And we encourage people to look at our Trends Journal's 2008 top 10 trend forecast that we made to decide for yourself to see what the future will bring as you then look at our 2009 forecasts that we made several months ago. The motto of the Trends Research Institute is think for yourself. And that's what people really need to do now if they're going to weather the greatest depression that just is coming around the corner.
Well, continued success, and we'll look forward to having you back on in the future.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.